I want to start with something you said at the press conference yesterday. You said your first, I don't know, weeks, days back on the downtown east side were traumatic and depressing for you.
Yeah.
And that's pretty strong language for someone who's already spent a lot of time in this neighborhood over the years. So can you expand on that? Like, what was it that was traumatic for you here?
You know, you can spend a lot of years here. You can have been the coroner for 20 years, and things gather. And it's why I stopped being chief coroner. I signed on to be chief coroner. I had another 3 years left. And eventually, things just start going bump in the night. So, like, when I drive around Vancouver, one of the reasons I live on Galliano Island is like I couldn't drive around Vancouver without triggering myself of this happened here or this, and pretty soon it got to be like it was the whole city. And so when I came down here, it was so different. And I never realized it for probably, I don't know, maybe a month or two. It was the normalcy that. And so I'd be walking down the street and literally I'd want to stop and put the person in a recovery position and make sure they were alive. But there were so many. And I mean, I remember within the first 2 weeks of going to a meeting where I came from Cordova and Columbia and walked up towards Maine, and the meeting was with the Overdose Prevention Society, Sarah Blythe. And at some point in that meeting, I closed my book and said, guys, I've got to go home. And I just climbed in my car and went out to the ferry and went home. And the thing that's just, it's PTSD. It's just, you know, and I knew this was going to happen going in. It wasn't like I was surprised. I knew that there was, but I think the thing that bothers me the most is now I'm normalized.
You're normalized to it.
You know,
Are you becoming numb to it?
3 months, I realized that I was normalized. But something else that really helped me was when you're in the downtown east side, you spend all your time looking down. If you watch people, they're always looking down. And when you're looking down, you're looking at despair. There's no other way to describe it. You're looking at people at their most vulnerable, under the worst conditions. Then one day I looked up and I was looking at First United, their new building, and I'm like, I'd never even, you know, and then I'm walking down the street here and I realized there's this stretch of pavement that's absolutely spotless. You could eat off of it.
Right.
And I'm like, and I remember saying to Nathan Allen, we work together, I'm like, what is this? I had no idea. And of course, here we are.
It's at Bob and Michael's place, yeah. Right outside, yeah.
Yeah, and I was on my way to meet Carol Lee because, I mean, like her dad was a good friend. And I've known Carol for years. And so, and when you look up and you see all of these buildings going up, there's hope there, you know, and so that's sort of the mixture. And I still have, you know, there's still things that trigger me, but
you're doing it for another 6 months, so.
Well, I hate stopping in the middle. Like I think you and I know that this was not going to end in 6 months, but this is the contract, and I said I will do my best to, you know, and it was pretty. After 2 months, I realized, like, I mean, I bet you we've spoken to. There's over 200 organizations in the downtown east side. Yeah. I'll bet you we've spoken to. I would say I could get them out of my book, but I would say probably maybe 100, 120 of them, literally hundreds of people. Mm-hmm. I hand out my phone number like it's. And so I get calls all the time from different people, and I haven't had one like, you know, you should be taken out and whatever. I haven't had anything like that. It's always been, you know, we have concerns about this, or
Yeah. What are people telling you? Like, was there a prevailing theme from those conversations?
The prevailing theme is that it's not getting better. And my sense is it's not getting better because we haven't come to realize that fentanyl is not heroin.
So we're treating this like the heroin crisis.
We have been. There's always been like, when we talk about treatment for heroin, it's going to be way different. I mean, and there's ongoing here cutting edge medical technology going on to deal with the chemical. That's really what it is. And so and that's understandable. It's not getting better, and I hear this continually from groups, and not at the street. Like, I hear about fragmentation, I hear about silos and that. But if you go down to the street here and you got a problem, they are interconnected. Like, it's incredible.
You mean the groups, the organizations?
The people who are on the street in these different groups. So I might walk in with a, let's say, I'm addicted. I've just arrived in downtown Eastside. I'm in my 20s, and I'm addicted, and I don't know what to do. You go to an organization, they may not know what the hell to help you, but they know somebody over here who knows somebody over here that can help them. And that coordination is really quite important. I think as you go up the level, it's not that the commitment isn't there, and it's not that the caring isn't there, is that you have to start worrying about how you're going to pay your bills. And so that's when you start into this competition for grants, for government contracts, for gaming,
For gaming money.
Money, yeah, the gaming money. And that's when you start coming into the fragmentation and the silos. And when I look at it from a business point of view, I think, like, if I could take 15 groups that were all addressing the same issue, it may be different pieces of that issue, but they're all addressing that same issue. That have, let's say the 15 groups, they may have 7 or 8 rental offices that they're maintaining. They have the administrative staff. They have everything that a business has, but they're competing all the way around for that, What would happen if we brought all of them together in a room and sat down and said, hey, you know what? We're all looking to help people get employed. Let's use employment as an example. And yet there's, X number, I don't know how many there are, and I'm working in that, but what would happen if we all got together? So we have like workwear, which is this amazing, 2 people that provide clothing for people who need jobs. So I've got a job, but I don't have the boots, I don't have the vest, so what would happen if we had them and we had all of these people who are finding jobs or trying to train, if they all came together and...
So better coordination?
Just better coordination, and, I hate to use this term, but a little more business-like, a little more accountability, a little more metrics that everybody, is concerned about the word metrics, but metrics are a two-way street. Metrics tell me, as the organization who's doing the service, how am I doing? And what do I need to make it better? Metrics tell the provider of the funds, and can also act as, how do I help them do this? How do I, and so,
So when you talk about accountability, what is the reaction you get?
Amazingly to me, I can't say overwhelming, but it's the majority. It's the majority of organizations, because it takes a tremendous toll when you're constantly out hunting.
Hunting for what?
Money.
Money, yeah.
Yeah. Or space, or maybe, sometimes it's spaces. But when you're not devoting it to the service that you want to provide, but rather in how do we keep the service going, it's terribly straining.
So you're saying overwhelmingly positive reaction? Yeah. But they're...
But it's on the understanding that I'm not here as government to lower their deficit. I'm not here to give money back. I don't know how much money is going into the downtown east side, but I know it's significant. And I think putting a number on it, I think it varies. I think if you went and looked at how much money came into the downtown east side during COVID, you'd be shocked. Just like everywhere else. I mean, there was just money flowing all across into here. And so in some cases, everybody ramped up. And then the money stopped, and suddenly you have you have certainly more employees, you have more spaces without that. So that accentuated it.
You indicated you want a clearer picture of where all the money is going.
Yes.
What is your understanding right now of where money is going and how it's being spent? Or do you have any picture of that?
The only picture I have is that there's 200 plus organizations, all trying to help in the downtown east side. And if it was coordinated and everybody pulled together, that same amount of money would go a lot further. It would lower the anxiety levels, because when you're constantly, when you have one person that does nothing but grants, you could pull this all together. And I don't want to stop any. There's two real answers to this. On one side of it is we need to have some idea of how it's going. The other side is, and one that people may not like, but this is taxpayer money. Mm-hmm. And I don't think there's, in Vancouver, and I'm only addressing the downtown east side, Vancouverites have shown themselves time and time again to be compassionate. I mean, we've done things that nobody else would have ever been allowed to do. But there's a fatigue setting in, and it comes from nothing to do with the downtown east side. It comes to do with, how do I keep a roof over my head? How do I feed my family? How do I clothe them? How do I put gas in my car? And how much money's going, and I don't see any difference in the downtown east side. It's just a sense of fatigue. And I think by addressing that in a way that we can actually answer that, because we should be answering that question of, the accountability. If we can answer that, I think it'll help lessen that fatigue, but it'll also give us a way clearer picture of how to manage this money.
Have you, in the first 6 months, looked at any financial statements?
Yes.
You have, from some of these nonprofits?
Well, I mean, virtually all of the nonprofits have to put out a report.
So you have looked at you've looked at those books?
Yes.
And do they give you a picture then of what's going on?
Well, it all depends what the service is that you're looking at. So if you're looking at housing, you have to take into consideration, for instance, the condition of the buildings, vacancies, are they habitable? When you get into other services like overdose prevention, for instance, and I might add, Sarah Blythe and overdose prevention provide numbers. They tell me what they're doing. We can see what they're doing. And so in those cases, it isn't so much the books that tell me as, we serve X number of people every single day. This year, we have taken X number of people and they've gone into care. And then the measurement has to go, okay, well, they got into care. What happens after that? Did they end up back here? So, I mean, the books tell one picture, but again, it depends on what the service is. And when you're small, like if you're operating on, say, a grant for $70,000, I mean, for the most part, it's difficult to maintain a level of bookkeeping when all you're trying to do is help people, and at the other side there's some agencies and some levels that it's just hard to measure it. Hard to measure what is success. Sometimes success is just keeping somebody alive. Sometimes success is getting somebody into housing. Sometimes success is having somebody go into treatment.
And that's success for the end user, the folks who are here. What is success, do you think, for the taxpayers? And many of them are here too, but for all the taxpayers who are helping to fund the programs here on the Downtown Eastside?
I think the result to the taxpayer is simply to be able to see the Downtown Eastside become back to the community it was. That, you know what, it's always going to be a little edgy, slightly unsightly, but there's a perception of danger. There's a perception of safety. And and I've learned this a long time ago. If there's a perception, it's real to you, okay? If you feel unsafe, it's unsafe, that's it. Whether I can walk the street, I've never, quite frankly, felt unsafe ever in the Downtown Eastside. But I can understand why people would, because it's, as the Swiss call it, unsightly.
That's polite.
Well, what can I say? and so, it's a matter of helping clean that up. It's a matter of actually seeing people move into some form of care. And, everybody lights their hair on fire over involuntary treatment. Yeah. In 1969, as a Mountie in North Van, I arrested people under that act, took them to the Lionsgate Hospital. They would be examined, and then I'd take them to Riverview. And so it's not something new. Yeah. My position on it is I'm not concerned about that. But what I am concerned about is you can't put people in jail for having medical illnesses. And I don't want people going into one flew over the cuckoo's nest. I want it to be caring, compassionate, and secure.
So you mentioned, and I do want to get back to the accountability issue, but now that we're talking about Riverview and involuntary care, you talked about that this began with Riverview closing down. So should we have another Riverview? Do we need something like that again?
I don't believe so. And I put a caveat on this. I'm not a doctor. And so, but I don't like perfect worlds. I like reality. But we have examples in Canada and in the United States of how medical treatment, and specifically mental health and illnesses or addictions, can be treated in a humane fashion in a secure location. Because what you need to do is, if the number's right, 60% of the people who are mentally ill in the Downtown Eastside are also addicted. And so when you take them into care, somehow you have to separate those two diseases.
Mental illness and addiction.
Right. And in some cases, and this is anecdotal, but it's from the medical profession, some cases what they find is when they take care of the addiction, the mental illness really comes up, because what they're doing is they're self-medicating. It's keeping it, and so. But this is the kind. Do I think that in the short term, just from space necessities, we're going to have to find places for people to go. In the long term, the one I love the best is like Alberta building 100 units in communities. Building 15. 5 of them are going into Indigenous communities. They go to the community and say, we'd like to put this facility in there. The community looks at it, says yes.
This is like a psychiatric facility? Or?
Psychiatric and addiction.
Okay.
And the community says yes, and the government says, okay, we're building it, and we're going to run it. And
you like this model?
I like the model. I think it could be, obviously there's different political realities between the two provinces. But I like the model from the point of view of, You can set her up for 38 million, you can run her for 6, and we know what the numbers are. And we can keep doing that until we've reached capacity, rather than build 5,000, you know, and
like a 5,000 bed kind of.
well, like Riverview,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah.
You know, and so Riverview, from my point of view, is simply would be an interim step, or any place. I mean, I don't know if Riverview's, I don't really know. I just say that, you know, whatever we're doing is an intermediary step to what we have to do. Like, if we don't start doing this, we just continue on. It's like insanity. You keep doing the same thing, expecting a different result.
You had said something interesting yesterday during your press conference, that some groups don't know where the money is going. And I just wanted to better understand what that meant.
Yeah, that may be, I mean, I didn't mean it like they don't know where it's going per se. I meant that they don't know what the end result is from that money. So there's no following on from that of what did we achieve with this?
You mean the metrics then?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, it wasn't like, I mean, I don't think that they're throwing money out I don't believe any of these organizations are throwing money out the window, or that there's any kind of nefarious stuff going on. I've seen no evidence of that.
Do you think there should be some sort of auditing of where the funding is going, some auditing of the organizations, or maybe it's a bigger picture audit?
I think that's up to the funder.
The government.
Let's
say the government.
Yes. I mean, all I'm really asking and talking about is what's considered normal in the real world. And I understand that it can be onerous for a very small organization. It's onerous. It's not so much the auditing. I don't believe that we should be going in and auditing. What I believe is I should present a report, maybe at 6 months. I think that, in some organizations they're being monitored like monthly, and it's hugely expensive to, so maybe quarterly, maybe biannually, but at some point there has to be something that's produced so that the funder can look at and sit down, not in isolation. It has to be, I sit down with the provider and say, wow, this looks pretty good. What about this here? How do we do that? Shouldn't be a long, huge process. But
have you been getting any resistance?
Oh, I will get resistance. There's no question.
You
I
will.
haven't had any. I mean, I haven't had any because we're just sort of, and that's perfectly normal. Yeah. It's some people see it threatening, and I understand that. I get that. But at the same time, there has to be, when people, when we have the far, I don't want to say that word, but when we have people who say that the downtown east side should just be cleansed and that we should come in here and take people and just get them out of the community so we can make it look better. Mm-hmm. I mean, to address that, you've got to show them that we're actually doing something here. Mm-hmm. Even if their ideas are crazy, we have to show them because they have a constituent and they need, and they're not wrong. I expect that too.
The current mayor of Vancouver, Ken Sim, has used the term poverty industrial complex in talking about the downtown east side. What is your take on that? And I mean, he's not the only one.
No, he's not the only one. And I think that there's a perception of that. And there may be instances of it, but for the most part, if you're in the downtown east side to make money, you're in the wrong spot, and I think that term goes back to people feeling alienated from what they see, what they think is the amount of funding going in, and how do we know where it's going on? And you have to, we always say government, but you have to remember, there's 3 levels of government here. There is charitable organizations, I've met people down here, philanthropic, who literally are giving millions of dollars. I don't mean a couple, I mean millions of dollars. We're here at Carol Lee's building. There's a lot of people that contributed to this. And not to give a plug, but this is the gold standard as far as I'm concerned for mixed housing, for rental. And then with Lily's place, it's amazing.
The health center.
It's amazing. I just went in there on my way here. I'm like, and so there's all kinds of different, like I never really thought about gaming. There's a lot of money, and so there's all of these different organizations, some of whom don't even want to be known, like the donors. Like, somebody would say, well, I gave 35 million here, but don't you dare tell anybody that it was me. It's just...
Why don't they want to be known?
I think for a variety of reasons, but I think mostly because they're paying back. So in one case, the guy said, our founder's brother died of a heroin overdose down here. Or in another case, it's just that they started, working class, all the rest of it, and they've done very well. And they want to pay back, but they don't want, they don't want to be known.
Your work falls under the Ministry of Housing.
Yes.
So, to a certain degree, you're looking at this through a housing lens, maybe. But on paper, that's where you are.
I think, in reality, you have to understand government. So when we talked about this initially, my position's always been that housing is where you start, and it's not so much. I always just thought if a roof and a door and someplace I could close it that's the start. The reality is that for the majority of people, it is about housing, because they're old like me. They're working poor with children. Like there's children being raised in these SROs. And so, there's that sort of position going on.
Because you are under the housing ministry.
Oh yeah.
I want to talk a little bit about housing.
Yeah, so we go back to that. So when you do a contract with the government, it has to be under a ministry, right? And so.
But I want to know, do we have, because you said you've looked up, we're in Bob and Michael's place, First United is about to open. Do we have the housing?
There's going to be probably close to 1,000 units built this year. That'll either be housing or shelters, which I don't consider housing, just to be clear. But it does put a, so there's 600 units. The city and the province are like in continual negotiation because all along Hastings Street there's 5 sites that the city owns or the province owns, and the Balmoral, St. Regis, the usual suspects. And so it's a matter of getting that going. But I mean,
are we doing the housing right? Like we're building it, so we're told.
Well, I think it's always changing. So for me to be building the housing right, you've got to separate it out. So we could have housing, for instance, like Bob's place here. Mm-hmm. Where you have children and families in here, and you have people paying rental housing. And without a huge number of supports. They don't need a huge number of supports. Then you have people who need housing where they need some supports. So the supports may be, I need to be reminded to take my medication. I need to be reminded to go to the doctor. I need to be reminded to put the tag on my door that shows that I'm still alive, that I'm not in my room. And then there's the last that need real support. So we're talking mental illness, addictions, mental illness and addictions, mental illness, addictions, and brain damage. And that's a whole different ballgame. So I can put, 100 and some odd people in here who are just poor, who are moms with kids, I couldn't do that with people. I couldn't put that many, or I shouldn't put that many in one space when you need that kind of support at the far end of the scale. And so, are we doing it properly? I mean, for the most part, what we've been doing is moving people from SROs into housing. More and more, we're getting better at figuring out what the housing should be, what the numbers should be. And my vision, and the vision of many people, is that there has to be a place in the downtown east side for people who are poor. There are going to be places, there are going to be people in the downtown east side who are going to be mentally ill, and there's going to be places where they're addicted. They have the same thing in Shaughnessy, the same thing in Dunbar. I'm not talking about anything out of the ordinary. But what you don't want is you don't want a community that's all poor, because that leads to the ghettoization, that leads to the isolation, and quite frankly, in a society that's always evolving, it's not possible.
But you need to have a neighborhood that people want to move into.
Yes.
As well.
And you know, on my Hope End, when I walk around, you know, I see a barber shop, I see a restaurant, I see a clothing store that's virtually, you walk one block over and you're in despair. You walk over here. And so you need the critical mass in a community to support business, so to support the agencies that are there to help people. But it shouldn't be one. It shouldn't be, oh, this is for rich and this is for poor. And we see instances all around here where there's mixed housing. And in fact, my take on it is that the people who go into mixed housing who are simply poor thrive in that situation. They thrive because they're meeting people. They thrive because they have a living room. They thrive because, oh, I'm the grandmother figure for that little family. Like, it's like your normal, what it looks like. And so they thrive in that situation too.
Right. So it sounds like it needs to be, as you said, a mix, and like the basics are there, the space is there, but the allocation, and then the supports need to be.
And I've always argued, you know, it used to be like, I don't know, I think 20% of the housing had to be social, and I don't like that number. I don't like any numbers. I'd say, okay, on individual buildings, what does it look like? What are the amenities? How's it going to look like? In some place, it could be easily 50-50 without any problems at all. In other cases, it won't be that. Maybe it's more than that in some cases. So, I mean, I hate these, you know, where we say, oh, you know, the city changes the zoning and it looks like the numbers for social housing, they say 4%, but that's a bottom.
Yeah.
It's not a top. So, yeah, I mean, you have to be really flexible down here.
So housing is one thing, but of course there's, as we've talked about, mental illness, addiction, severe addiction, brain damage.
Yeah, and so, you know, let's just take the health end of it, okay? The health component down here is really quite amazing. The street nurses, the social workers that come down here through Vancouver Coastal, the services that they've set up are stellar, but it's stressful. It's like being a cop or a firefighter down here. Like, you're right there on the front end, day in, day out, and so it's really difficult. But there's some nobody ever talks about St. Paul's Hospital has this Road to Recovery program. It's cutting edge, and I think maybe it hasn't been spoken about, maybe because they want to make sure it's up and running, but also it's starting small, so they're talking 35, 40 people, right? But everything starts small. You don't ever, come fully bloomed, and so we don't talk about that. We don't talk about the fact that they're developing this so that it can go province-wide, because whatever we do in the downtown east side, my wish is that it's exportable, that we can go to take it to I use Duncan all the time because I love Duncan, or Prince George, or whatever. And so St. Paul's Hospital going in over here, I think, is going to be quite amazing from a number of points of view. It's going to be amazing because they're used to dealing with the downtown east side. I mean, St. Paul's was the go-to place, so they're used to that. It's going to be amazing because it's going to pull in a whole bunch of people who can then help the downtown east side from the point of view of a haircut. Like I said, you know, it's there.
You've said a lot of things that sound very positive. Like, if I'm just going by the things you've said, it sounds like all the building blocks are there. So what are we missing? It's
like a puzzle. It's like, initially it was like whack-a-mole. Because I thought, okay, I've got that one settled, then something would come up over here. That, you know, and I've got away from that. I think that it is, I think, you know, if we don't think positive, we don't look at what we can do rather than what we can't do, you'll never move forward. And so I didn't start from positive. Like, I did not start from positive. But I just see incrementally things that are happening. Now, there's lots of bad stuff going on down here. There's like sex trade workers that are being exploited. There's drugs that, you know, people keep saying, well, you know, you were a narc. Like, I'm like, this is a whole different ballgame. I have no idea how you deal with this drug, because when I was there was like 3, 4 heroin groups, right? You know who they were. They knew who you were. Here it's like, you don't know where it's coming from. You don't know what's in it. You don't know who's cooking it. You have no idea. So that's, to me, that's very frustrating. But
so how do you attack all this in the next 6 months?
Just every day talking to people, putting together lists, writing down ideas. I'm on my like fourth of these, you know, and trying to put together people who want to move forward, who want to, you know.
So do we have all the services? Because it's starting to sound like that. Like what I said, it sounds like the building blocks are there, but the pieces are not fitting together, talking to each other, or maybe we have too many of these blocks and not enough of these blocks.
I don't know whether we have enough of these and not enough of others. And I don't think that we'll ever have the amount of care that would be the perfect world. I mean, just given the way the world is, trying to find doctors, trying to find nurses, just trying to find orderlies, just to, you know, keep things running. It's getting more and more difficult. But that being said, when I meet with healthcare professionals, almost always they're positive. They're looking at moving forward. They're not looking at moving back. So I think that everything is here. We may need more. We do need more of some things. I don't know that we need less of anything. I mean, we need more housing. We need more health care. But some of it's just coordination. You know, for instance, one of the big things I hear down here is they can't get identification. I'm like, well, like, what happens? Well, I go look at other governments, and they have a spot where it's one-stop shopping. I go in there, I can get my ID, because without ID, like, it was foreign to me. I'm like, what are you talking about? Right. So if I have ID, you know, then I have access. Something as simple as filing your taxes. Right. Like, most of these people aren't going to pay taxes. They're owed taxes because they don't make enough to be in that ball. And so we have, like, for instance, now I'm going to an event next week at the Union Gospel Mission, where they have like a whole day. And they bring in accountants and Revenue Canada, and it just didn't hit my mind. Yeah. So we need to have a place where government services, so healthcare, housing, identification.
And healthcare includes treatment, I would think.
Yes, but how do you get people into that treatment? And what's it look like? And what is the treatment? Like, I mean, basic wound care should be done right down here. The basics of health care should be done here. And that's what we saw when we, 20 years ago when we opened up different places where you had wound care. The numbers, when we opened up Insight, the numbers dropped.
I mean treatment for addiction.
Yeah. Oh, well. And again, we have a system
rehabilitation
that I don't think is really geared for cooperation. I think it's less and less, but there's always been this just say no, Salvation Army, to safe supply, and they never talk to each other. So they're sort of where in fact the continuum of care is just say no, over to safe supply. And there's in the middle here, there's a whole realm, but they're disjointed. Like, we don't have anybody who's in charge of agencies that do treatment.
Yeah, we often hear from people that they want to get treatment, that they want to get off
and it
the
should
drugs.
be on
and
demand.
they say that they can't, there's no space for them.
Well, you end up phoning for days on end just to try and get,
And this is what you've heard as well.
Well, it's always been like this. I mean, not from that point of view, nothing's changed. I mean, when we started Insight, then we opened On-Site, which was the second floor that we had was detox. Then on the third floor, we actually had treatment. We knew that in Insight, when somebody said, I got to quit this, we just took them right upstairs.
Go upstairs.
Just right upstairs. Because we knew that if we let them go out the door, 5 minutes later, it'd be gone.
So we need more detox, more treatment.
We need more detox. We need more treatment, yes.
You said that you don't want to take 1 cent away.
No.
At the end of this 6 months, do you anticipate recommending more money?
I would have no hesitation in doing that, but I also understand the fiscal constraints that we're under, especially now, at all levels of government. And, everybody wants to blame this government or this city government or this provincial government for where we're at. I mean, this started with the Socreds. Most people don't even know who Socreds are. It started there, and it's just been kicked down the road. Now, there's been stops and starts on mental health. There's been stops and starts on addiction. But it was just been sort of kicked down the road, and it's been going on since late 80s, early 90s. And if you want to change this, then you've got to act. But
does that include spending more money?
Well, I mean, that's up to the government. I mean, that's a government decision. If you want to keep kicking this down the road, then you are going to have to expect that you're going to have a tough time helping the downtown Eastside. And you're going to have and perhaps as important, you're going to have a tough time in Duncan, in Prince George, and Kelowna, and all of every place. And it's across Canada. And so, this is like sort of the place that's most well known. But I can guarantee you that every town, every city has this. And they say, oh, well, it's fewer. It may be fewer, but that community does not have the resources nor the wherewithal to be able to deal with it.
But in terms of this neighborhood, you said earlier, you think if we take a closer examination of what each organization is doing, that the money could potentially be spent more efficiently.
Yes, I believe that. And I believe that that's the case, and we always use the downtown Eastside, but that's the case any time when you go and look at a problem with multi-organizations, that, it's not that they don't want to do a good job, and it's not that they're trying to help. It's just that they could do so much better with coordination and with secure funding too.
So you mentioned, it's not just this government. It's been successive governments.
And I take the heat.
Yeah, so take the heat. So tell me.
Including me as mayor and including me as senator. If I was mayor again, I'd open 10 Insights.
You'd open 10 Insights?
Yes. at that time. I don't know whether, I mean, now Insight is almost an anomaly because everybody's smoking, they're not injecting, which is a whole different ball of wax. So I can tell you that an inhalation.
So instead of Insight, more overdose prevention
No,
sites?
it's because there's no you can't safely smoke fentanyl in an enclosed space for your workers, for everybody. So we see the inhalation rooms as outside, covered in a tent, like the Overdose Prevention Society. And so if I was mayor, I would have pushed a lot harder. And people just don't believe me in this, but you know, Gordon Campbell, who's not a socialist, and Larry Campbell, who ran for the socialists but may not be completely a socialist, he would have supported us on this. People have no idea how, you know, he started needle exchanges. I mean, he was like, and so we could have done way more. As coroner, I have recommendations. I mentioned yesterday, a couple of weeks ago, I thought, okay, I've got to really go and look at Vince Kane report. Like, I remember when he wrote that, I was amazed. Like, I'd never seen a document that was so thorough. And I went and read it again, and I'm like, my God, if we had, you know, if, like, you could take the Vince Kane report today, and it would make a difference. And there's lots of reports like that. There's you know, there's lots of reports. There's lots of coroners' recommendations, you know.
So I know we've talked about this before. There are all those reports. This has been going on for so many years, and now you're doing this. Yeah. So is anything going to change after this? Like, what changed after Vince Kane's report? What changed after X, Y, and Z report?
I think that I'm not looking for a report. I want things done, and if they aren't done, I'm not going to be happy, and I will be public. I will be public about it. Yeah. And it's not a threat. Yeah. The government knew that. You know, we had a long talk about, are you sure you want to hire me? Yeah. You know, and so I'm not prepared to have a report, but I'm not prepared either to make recommendations that I know are just perfect world recommendations. And in this time and space are not going to get traction. And so I just simply call myself a realist. I look at it and say, okay, this is what we should be doing. Now, can we do that in this current climate?
There is frustration, I think, as you talked about compassion fatigue, helplessness. Not just here, but throughout the city, throughout the region. People who never come here, but know about it and just don't know what to do. Like they see the images on TV, yeah. Their heart breaks for the people down here, yeah. But they don't know what to do anymore. Like,
and that's a realistic frustration. That's a very, you know, but what, you know, one of the things that, you know, on that, you know, there's two things. You have the people driving through here with their camera going, and it's on YouTube, you know, may they rot in hell. And then on the other hand, you have the people who are doing so much down here, that the buildings that are going on, the services, the way that, you know, I would invite you to go to First United and take a tour. I mean, it's the gold standard. And they've thought of everything from a women's shelter, separate, showers, you can chill out, to a space for the public, to help. So there's some really, it's an evolution too of how we go about this. And so, you know, to those people, I think if I was the premier, every week I would be down here having a good news story. One story. Today we're here, today we're there. And it's not, oh, poor, oh, here's Larry Campbell, and he lives, you know, he's 78 years old, and he lives in and I'm showing them to it, and I'm showing you that, you know, I've gone to SROs down here that are so organized, Wendy Peterson and the SRO cooperative, you know, where they've got a guy who's in charge of fire safety, and like they take this seriously. Okay, there's no fooling around. When I say there's going to be a fire drill, you'd better be here. We're going to do that. They got a guy who cooks once a week. They have a communal dinner. They have a guy who is a handyman. Oh, your switch doesn't work. And they've got this. Is it fancy? No. Is there everybody who uses the same bathroom? Yes. But there's a real sense of community there. The lifespan of that SRO is pretty close to the end. But this sense of community there is if I could go to something like that at the end of every day, I'd be a happy camper. Yeah.
Is that the thing that the rest of Vancouver is missing about the downtown east side that they don't understand?
They're only seeing one aspect of it on YouTube, Facebook, TikTok, whatever's out there, and it becomes amplified by the wingnuts. Who are out there amplifying this for their purposes. The same ones, you know, who can't accept reconciliation. The same ones who think everybody down there, they deserve it. They're there because they made a choice. And they did. And that's true. They did make a choice. But that doesn't mean you should die from it. It doesn't mean you should be laying in the pouring rain. It doesn't mean that people should be stepping over you. It doesn't mean that you should be treated less than human.
Larry, thank you very much.
Thank you. And I want to end with this. I was going to do this yesterday, but I thought it would be self-serving. But the media has to know how much I appreciate the room that they've given me. I know they could be down here following me with a camera every day, and they didn't. And it's the media that I knew, not the media that everybody talks about now that they complain about. It's the media that I knew when I was coroner, when I was mayor, that there was a respect on both parties, and you answered when you could. And they left you alone while you were doing that. So I don't want you guys to all go for the Mother Teresa award on this, okay?
Well, you know, I think...
But it's patient. You have a job to do, and you have to, you have a job to do, and it's one of the paramount jobs in society. And I've always recognized that. And so when I can talk, God knows I love to talk. Then,
That's why we enjoy talking to you. It's always entertaining. No, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay, well, and let's continue the talk. I'm not going to be near as reclusive over the next 6 months, I've decided.
Yeah.
That I'm not going to hold press conferences, but I'm prepared to answer questions that, people, that the media want to ask about, what do you see? So what's going on? I'm good with that.